Hi, I'm Diane Marie Collins, and you have entered the DM Zone. The DM Zone recently went on the road to the Sedona International Film Festival in Sedona, Arizona. We visited with Ed Asner. He was live on stage in Oxymoron, and Richard Dreyfuss in a movie called The Lightkeepers, a wonderful romance set in 1912. We then visited with Ashley Wren Collins and her partner Sean Bennett in a fun movie called Chasing Taste about a film critic who loses his sense of taste and smell. Then Sean Lackey and Kevin Farley were in a fun movie called The Yank about an Irish American who finds out he may not be as Irish as he thinks. Lots of fun, great humor. You really need to see that movie. Also, serious topics were covered at the festival: Alzheimer's, water shortage, peace, and immigration reform. These movies, documentaries, and shorts were Rooted in Peace, Lost Music, The Immigration Paradox, and Slingshot. It was a wonderful time being able to visit with these creators, young, old, it didn't matter. The thing that was similar about all of them, the passion that they felt for their craft. If you've never attended the Sedona Film Festival, the Sedona International Film Festival, you really need to. It is a must-see. It's exciting and fun, parties, movies, live theater, everything combined. I hope you find the time to put it on your list soon. Let's watch these interviews now, okay?
Because of cost.
That's right, yes.
Yes.
It's all money.
The first time in history that we actually said to ourselves, education is getting too costly. Really? What else are you going to spend money on, pal?
Right.
If you're not going to spend money on schools? And why is it that money is spent in rich schools and not on poor schools? I mean, and then now we're privatizing things as if that was an answer to something. And I don't care whether people blame the teachers' union, which is, I don't know, it's to me it's like being an intellectual pretzel to actually blame the people who work hardest, work closest. And I've actually had this one guy on the radio say to me, he said, "Your friend Rob Reiner hung up on me the other day." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I said taxes were too high." I said, "Okay, let's start again. You think that cops have a right to live above the poverty line?" Yeah. You think that firemen deserve to live in the communities they serve? Yeah. You think that teachers deserve, well, wait a minute. Teachers are the rotten eggs. All of them? Not all of them, but enough. And I said, and you turn your kids over to them for 9.5 hours a day for 5 days a week for 12 years? What kind of a schmuck are you? I said, now, who pays those salaries? Silence.
You didn't say you do.
I said, who pays their salaries? Well, I said, you do. We do. That's called taxes. So the next time you talk about taxes, try thinking not how big or small, but what do we need? Try starting the discussion from what do we need? And then the answers come out. We need this money and this much money and this much money. All right, okay, then divvy it up amongst the people correctly, and you know, let's get some sanity back here. But when he said teachers, he said, what are you going to do about the teachers? I said, no. What are you going to do about the teachers? I have an idea. I said, why don't you try tripling their salaries and firing the bad ones? Well, that's what I went to Oxford for this. And I realized that what I had gotten in school was no longer being taught in any way. And as a matter of fact, there's no civic authority, no civic history, no civic culture at all being taught in American schools. And that means that a system which is based upon the machine going by itself, in that you develop intellectually honed skill sets in the young so that when they take over the country, they can run it. They don't know how to run the country because they don't know that they are sovereign. They don't know that they have civic authority, that they have the right to say, excuse me, you didn't answer the question. And I blame the press to a great extent. I think the press is in the pocket. Instead of being representative of people, they are constantly in the pocket of political special interests. And it's complicated, but you got to know about the political miracle that America is. And it is a political miracle. Before America, you can safely say that 98% of all of the human race was kept in complete ignorance and bondage. They were lashed, they had their fingers chopped off, or they were killed if they learned anything. If they learned anything outside their trade, they were killed. 98% of the world, in every empire, in every country, in every society in the world, only the 2% of the wealthy were ever educated. And the sovereign power, like Louis of France or whoever, was educated to knowing how to run a country. We deliberately stopped doing that. And so I could take a whiteboard and you could tell me any problem that we have today, and I'll bring it right back down to the absence of the teaching of civic authority. We no longer understand anything of the stories on the front pages of any newspaper in the country. You do not understand Ukraine. You do not understand the Wall Street bailout. You do not understand foreign policy in the Middle East. You do not understand ISIS. You do not understand anything. And it's because they do not offer it to you. And they do not teach you how to think clearly. And that is all stuff that can be learned and can be taught, and you must teach love of country to the very young. You try to teach a teenager love of country, and you'll be met with a wall of cynicism and skepticism. But the young can learn to love their country with glory tales and mythologies that lift up the values of the Constitution. And if you don't do it, your children will come to you at a certain point and say something that has never before been said. They're going to say, how could you have abandoned us like this? Because we have eviscerated their middle and high school education, eviscerated it. And they hold off special training for universities and lawyers. That was never the point here. The point here was that people could come here and get freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of endeavor, freedom of opportunity without being wealthy. And now we've turned everything on its head. And all of the companies that made this city and state what it is and the nation, all the family companies will be shredded by their competition. They will be shredded. The military will be held unreliable. The military is already thought of as bullying. The concepts of preparation and consequences are not taught even to consider, so that we go into the Middle East with an army. We don't know who they are that we're fighting. We don't know that they've got a 600-year-old civil war going on. We have no exit strategy. I mean, this is stupidity at its highest. And the people who founded this country did not found us so that America could be run by people at their worst. That's why it's so critically important to rearrange this. And the fact is, everyone has gotten so lazy that most of us don't know that education is in the hands of the states. It has nothing to do with the federal government. And you have the right, when the federal government comes in and says no child left behind or Common Core, to say, get the out of here. And there's nothing wrong with a state or a community establishing its own civic curriculum. And if you don't, you'll see the consequences of that so much faster than you'd expect. And you're beginning to see a glimmer of it right now. The Constitution created a revolution of thought in 1787, 200 years ago. You're now beginning to see the future, the footprint of the future, because you're seeing white American and British kids joining Islamic extremist organizations. Now imagine that Republican democracy, as we created it, which gifted mankind with all kinds of respect, is going to be taken out of history by theological murderers. And we will go right back to the 5th century. And if you think that I'm kidding or that I'm exaggerating in any way, pay attention, because it's happening and it's an invisible problem. One doesn't automatically connect up. But I'll tell you, if you don't stand together and go to PTA, go to Rotary, go to the boards of education and say, we demand a civic curriculum, you won't get it, and the country will be finished before the end of this century. So I stopped my career because I was terrified for my kids. My kids they mean more to me than I can possibly tell you. And I'm terrified that they're going to be without any weaponry, without any ability to defend, without the ability to think their way through the horrifying ownership of the country by special interests alone. Nobody else has a thing. I attended the White House, what they call the civic rollout at the university level. When I heard the words university level, I raised my hand and I said, if you think you're going to hold off teaching love of country and culture and civic authority to when a kid is 19 years old, you will be met with absolute failure. You have to start when they're young, and you have to have Enlightenment values taught to all. And there is a statement in the Constitution called the preamble. And the preamble is a statement that if you're an American, I wouldn't understand anyone disagreeing with any phrase of the preamble. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and ensure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. If anyone here just heard something they disagreed with, raise your hand. Okay. Then do me a favor. Sign it. Take the preamble, sign your name to it, and send it to my website, which is the DreyfusInitiative.org. If I get 250 signatures, 250,000 signatures, I'm going to call for a civic strike. 30 minutes on a Monday or Tuesday, coordinated by time zones, 12:30 East, 9:30 West. For 30 minutes, you don't go, you don't do, you don't buy, you don't call, you don't do nothing. You stop. Not enough to hurt the economy, but enough to get their attention. And that's what you've got to do, get their attention. Wake up, because we're blowing it. We're really blowing it. American education is in the toilet. We are being outthought by every of the great powers. We have a large military without any political authority that runs it. We are in desperate trouble. And if I could get across to you how urgent this is and how fast it's going to eat us, I'd juggle. So take a look at the preamble to the Constitution, put your name under it, and send it to my website. And I will call for a national civic strike.
I told you would enjoy those interviews. I had so much fun at the Sedona International Film Festival. And remember, you have been in the DM Zone. Come back soon.